Once again, Sidney Crosby has been called to Team Canada for the Olympic Games, and Pat and I are going to discuss that right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Dam. You can follow him on all social media platforms at SendInForWet. Remember, you can also follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins, and you can find us on Instagram now at LockedOn_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And Pat, before we get to the meat of today's episode, we did have to correct ourselves from something on Monday because we had a case of the Mondays when we were discussing something regarding Isaac Howard. We got the year completely wrong when it came to his deadline to sign. It's August 15th, 2026, not 2025, though most of my point still stands, and that is Tampa Bay, they're still going to want to get this done sooner rather than later. Instead of having 2 months to move him, they have 14 months, but still, the closer you get to that date in 2026, the less leverage you're going to have. So I still think they're going to want to get this done sooner rather than later, but we did want to correct ourselves. We apologize on that. Totally our fault. You can flame us for that in the comments and all that, but we don't like getting stuff like that wrong on the show. So we 100% apologize on that. But getting to now the meat of today's episode, Pat, we got the first 6 names for each Olympic country for men's hockey on Monday, and that was a great way to start my day. I am so excited for Olympic hockey to return. This will be the first time that NHL players are back at the Olympics since 2014. I can't even believe that's a real sentence just because it's been so long. The last time NHL players played at the Olympics, I was a sophomore in high school and only 16 years old. I was going to turn 17 that year, but I was literally only 16. I am now almost 30, people. It's been crazy how long it's been since NHL players have been allowed to play at the Olympics. And speaking of that, congratulations to Sidney Crosby. We all knew he was going to be one of the first 6 named. He's going to be the captain of Team Canada at the 2026 Olympics. He joins Connor McDavid, Cale Makar, Nathan MacKinnon, Sam Reinhart, and Braden Point as the first 6 names for Team Canada. And I'm stoked for him. Obviously, he's very upset by the way this summer went. He usually does not lose while wearing the Team Canada sweater. They lost at the World Championships before having a chance to win gold this year. But Sid, he's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. He won it 2010 and 2014. He's won the World Cup of Hockey. He's obviously just won the 4 Nations. He has succeeded basically every time he has worn the Team Canada sweater, outside of this year, of course. But he's really going to want to go out with a bang because you look at it, Pat, he's going to be 38 for the Olympics here. This is probably the last time he's going to be wearing that sweater at the Olympics. So that means this is going to be a bit bittersweet for him, but we knew he was going to be named as one of the first 6 players. So congratulations to him.
No surprise at all that he's among the first 6 for Team Canada. It's a no-brainer. Like you said, he is going to be Captain Canada once again. And this is probably his swan song. I won't rule out completely 2030, depending upon where he is as a player, but it would be I would imagine in 2030, a very reduced role. He would probably be in the bottom 6. He would probably be an alternate captain after giving way to Connor McDavid as the next Captain Canada. But this really is kind of, I would imagine, Sidney Crosby's last hurrah at the Olympics. He's coming on up to the end of his career. He's done everything that you can possibly do in the sport of hockey. And let's be real here. He's still got game left. This isn't like this is a ceremonial Olympic invite for him. He was one of the better players at the 4 Nations. He had a very good year this year. And with him as a Team Canada member, whether alternate captain or captain, they have been extremely successful under Sidney Crosby. And I know at the beginning of it, it was still Canada's world in hockey, at least. It was Canada and then everybody else. Thing is, over the past 15 years, the rest of the world is starting to catch up. We talk about Team USA getting really good and Team USA really starting to assert themselves as a true superpower when it comes to hockey. A lot of European countries have continued to develop. A lot of Eastern Bloc teams have continued to develop as talent. So along with him still being one of the best players in the game, he's also continued Canada's dominance on the international stage as other teams and nations continue to develop. So as much as it is a swan song, it's much deserved.
100%. I mean, he's one of 26 players to be in the Triple Gold Club. Of course, he's won the World Junior Championship in 2005. He's won a World Championship in 2015. We were close, Pat, to getting him to join the double Triple Gold Club, but we'll have to see if that maybe changes next year if he plays in the World Championships. But I remember going back to the Four Nations, there was real concern that he was maybe not even going to be able to play because he had just suffered that nasty looking injury just days before the Four Nations face-off was going to begin. And he goes there, he practices, he still looks a little bit iffy, but he goes out there and plays. You can tell he's banged up, but he still goes out there and shows why he is still one of the best players in the world, despite being pretty banged up. Like, you can tell while watching a lot of those games, he was not even close to 100%, but it goes to show how much it means to wear that Team Canada sweater. He absolutely loves it, and it's going to be great seeing him captain that squad at least one more time. Again, we'll have to see for the World Championships next year, maybe for the Olympics in 2030, though I think he might not be captain at that point. I think it might be Connor McDavid's time to be the captain at that time, but we'll have to see. But at least for this time, he is going to captain Team Canada once again, and that roster is going to be absolutely stacked once again. I mean, they're going to go in as the favorite, even though they're going to have shaky goaltending. We'll have more on the other rosters coming up in the second segment. But you just look at the first six players that were named, Pat. Team Canada, once again, very much the favorite, at least right now.
For sure. And to kind of build off of your point about Sidney Crosby at the Four Nations, this is kind of something that I've always said about Sidney Crosby, and I know it's not the hottest take, I know it's not the most unique take, is that he just has the clutch gene. He has the ability to fight against whatever forces are against him to be one of the best players on the ice, because he was pretty banged up, like you said, going into Four Nations. And it was apparent, especially in the preliminaries, that he wasn't 100%, but he still made an impact as a playmaker. And then in the final, he was one of the best players on the ice. And he just has that as a player, is that when the games get bigger, so does he. And I'm not going to sit here and rattle off a list of players who don't, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, there are players who, when the spotlight starts to shine a little bit brighter, a little bit hotter, they shy away from it. Sidney Crosby runs to that. He always has. And that's part of the reason that, one, he is part of Canada's first six. It's why he's more than likely going to be the captain once again. And it's why Canada has continued to be one of the best hockey nations on the planet, because that has an effect on the rest of the roster. This guy has done everything you can do in hockey: gold medals, Stanley Cups, MVPs, random international championships, you name it, he's done it. And he still works his ass off. It's what Colby Armstrong always said about Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby works like there's a league better than the NHL that he's trying to make, as if it's not the top league in the world. And he's already one of the best players, but he works like he is a day away from getting cut.
It's so funny you bring that up, because I was listening to 32 Thoughts after the Four Nations face-off ended, and there was all this talk about how excited so many players were to get the chance to play with Sidney Crosby on the international stage for the first time, just because we hadn't had best on best hockey for so long. And they were loving it. Like, they got to see how he was as a leader. They got to see what he was doing in the locker room to really get the team ready. They got to see how he conducted himself on the ice. They got to be teammates with him. And a lot of those players that hadn't played with him on the international stage before, they fed off that. And they're going to get the chance to do that once again at the Olympics in February. Also, the schedule for Team Canada for Sidney Crosby Canada will play the Czech Republic on February 12th. The 13th, they will play Switzerland. And then the 15th, they will play France. So those are their first 3 games of the Olympics coming up next February. Again, I cannot wait. This is going to be awesome. But that will do it for this first segment. Coming up in the second segment, Pat and I are going to discuss the other 6 players that were named to a lot of other countries on Monday, including Team USA, Sweden, Finland, Germany, Switzerland, all that good stuff. Stay tuned for that coming up here in the second segment. Before we get to that, though, we have to tell you all about our first sponsor, and that is Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for your unsaturated fats to help you keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they are always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. And Pat, I am super stoked for Olympic hockey to return just because we're going to be seeing a lot of players that really have not had the chance to represent their countries on the Olympic stage. We do have to start, though, of course, with Team USA. We'll be rooting for them just because that is our home country. Austin Matthews, of course, will be there. He won't be on Team Canada, as I joked 4 years ago on this podcast. Probably the dumbest thing I have ever said on this show, that I accidentally said that Austin Matthews would play for Team Canada. If you want to go find that, please go do. You can roast me for it. Probably the dumbest thing I've ever said on this pod. But Austin Matthews will be there. So will Brady Tkachuk. So will Matthew Tkachuk. Charlie McAvoy was also named. Jack Eichel. And, of course, Quinn Hughes. He wasn't there at the Four Nations because he was hurt, but I'm really stoked for him to be at the Olympics in 2026. USA will play Latvia on February 12th. They'll then play Denmark on February 14th. And on the 15th, they will play Germany. Leon Draisaitl will be there for Germany. Tim Stützle will be there. Mo Seider. I'm really stoked to see Leon Draisaitl play for Team Germany, by the way. It's going to be great seeing how he does for his home country. But for Team USA, most of the roster picks itself, but they still need to work around the edges a little bit. You don't need to bring players like Chris Kreider, Brock Nelson, and Vince Trocheck back. I think you can learn from those lessons of the Four Nations, and you can bring in players that are a bit better, like Tage Thompson just scored a golden goal for Team USA at the World Championships. There's no reason why he should not be on this team come February. I think Cole Caulfield makes a lot of sense, and I also think Jason Robertson makes a ton of sense as well. I think those are the 3 players that should be replacing those 3 players that I just named. And also maybe Jake Sanderson gets some more minutes for Team USA. I was maybe a bit surprised that they didn't include Connor Hellebuck just because he won A, the Vezina, and B, the Hart Trophy. But I guess they wanted to go with both Tkachuk brothers for this one. But still, Team USA, also one of the top favorites. This is going to be the best Olympic USA team, I think, of my lifetime. That's for sure.
They're going to be really good. There's no two ways about it. There is a lot of American talent in the NHL that's going to be available to the US Olympic program. This is also going to be a big Olympics for Team USA because it has been 16 years since they've even medaled at an Olympics. They have not won a medal since 2010 when they lost to Canada in the gold medal game getting silver. That's how long it's been since Team USA has even been on the podium at the Olympics for hockey. So there is a lot of expectation for this group. As for the goalies, I mean, I think we're pretty well set that it's going to be Jake Ottinger and Connor Hellebuck. I don't think we need to make that announcement right now. That, like you said, this is a Team USA that a lot of the roster has already been picked and picked itself because of how good some of these players are. And let's be completely real here. The first 6 is part of a very smart marketing strategy between the IIHF and the NHL. It's to continue to build hype and build excitement for the Olympics. And the way you do that is you slowly leak out who's going to be on your team rather than what they used to do, which I don't know if a lot of people remember this from both 2010 and 2014, they just announced the rosters at the Winter Classic.
Right.
They just had guys come out and say, this is who's on the team. And then in 2 months, or a month and a half, or however short the time period was, these guys will be playing at the Olympics. So go have fun. And that was not a good way to build excitement for it. So it's a good lesson learned by the IIHF and the NHL to get people excited for this. Here's the question that I want to ask you, because this is a Penguins podcast. Do you think Brian Rust has a chance to make Team USA?
I think he has an outside shot, but I think that the United States at this point has a little too much talent for him right now. Maybe you can argue as an extra. I don't want to sound like, I'm being biased against him or anything like that, but just with the way that the U.S. has really developed talent these last several years, I think there's just some better players than him right now. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to see Brian Rust there. He has had a fantastic career, but I think when you look at some of the players that were left off of Team USA from the Four Nations, again, like a Tage Thompson, Cole Caulfield, Jason Robertson, I think those three names make more sense to replace the other three names that I mentioned. I'd rather have Brian Rust over someone like a Kreider, Trocheck, or Nelson, but I think when you look at the three names I just named, they're better players at this point. So I hear you. But I will say, Pat, if Erik Karlsson and Rickard Rakell are both still Penguins at the start of the season, you will see them on Team Sweden. So there's only one Penguin that's named to the Olympic rosters right now, and that is Sidney Crosby. But that can potentially change if Rickard Rakell and Erik Karlsson are still Penguins come this October. We very much expect them to be on Team Sweden for the Olympic Games after they were on the Four Nations team.
I also look at it this way with Brian Rust, is we know that the IIHF roster limits are larger than what it was at the Four Nations. The Four Nations went with NHL rules, obviously, because it was an NHL sanctioned tournament, but you can have 22 skaters on your roster when you go to the Olympics. The roster limit is 25, 22 skaters, 3 goalies. And if Brian Rust is skater number 22 and he's not an everyday guy,
that's fine.
You play him in the preliminaries once or twice. And then once you get to the medal round, should you make it to the medal round, we obviously don't want to assume, because we saw what happened with Canada at the World Championships. Anything can happen, but he strikes me as a guy that, with Mike Sullivan and Bill Guerin being the guys running the show for Team USA, he could be forward skater number 22 as a lifetime achievement award. Hey, you've done really well. You probably would have had a crack at it back in whatever that would have been, 21, 22, whenever the last time that they could have gone, when he was really looking like one of the better American players before a lot of these young guys really started to come up. I can see him being a 22nd skater, but I also look at it as there's a lot of stiff competition for American skaters right now. And is he in the top 25 best American skaters? I'd say so, but when you can only take 22, it's going to be real difficult to justify putting him on the roster.
It just goes to show how deep the USA is now compared to where it was in 2010 and 2014. Like that 2010 team, I still remember it very vividly. That team was really good. That team was deep. This 2026 team is going to be even deeper. And that just goes to show how great the U.S. development program has been at churning out players in the NHL, and not just churning out players, churning out very good to elite players in this league. So again, I like Brian Rust quite a bit. I would say I agree. Top 25 is fair, but I think if he makes it, it's right along the edges for that roster. As for some of the other 6 players that were announced to their respective countries, Pat, I am very excited. For example, Switzerland announced theirs. You have Nico Hischier, Roman Josi, Jonas Siegenthaler, Nino Niederreiter, Kevin Fiala. That team is going to be, I think, pretty underrated at the Olympics. For Germany, you have Tim Stützle, Mo Seider, Leon Draisaitl. That's going to be a lot of fun. Again, seeing Leon play for Team Germany. The Czech Republic, seeing David Pastrnak get a chance to play for his team. You got Marty Necas there, Pavel Zacha, Lucas Dostal, Andre Palat, Radko Gudas for the Czechia. And then obviously for Finland, you got Sebastian Aho, Sasha Barkov, Miro Heiskanen, UC Saros, Mikko Rantanen, Esa Lindell. Obviously for Team Sweden, congratulations to Gabe Landeskog. He is one of the first 6 there, and I would imagine, Pat, that he will be the captain for Team Sweden at the Olympics. He came back beautifully at the end of the season for Colorado Avalanche into the playoffs. He is there along with Rasmus Dahlin, Lucas Raymond, Willie Nylander, Adrian Kempe, and Victor Hedman. Again, we can keep going down the list here if we want. There were some really fun players named to some of the other teams, like, France, Italy. There were some NHL players on Denmark, of course, Latvia, obviously. I'm just really stoked to see a lot of these other countries and a lot of these NHL players get to play for the respective countries that weren't there for the Four Nations face-off. I said that was kind of like an appetizer. We're getting closer now to the main course, and I can't wait.
This will be a little bit of a hot take, but this might shape up to be one of the best Olympic hockey tournaments in a very, very long time. Because there's going to be one or two cannon fodder teams. I imagine France and Italy aren't going to make a ton of noise. Italy's obviously there because they're a host country. Right. And the host country gets an automatic bid. France has a couple players here and there, but it's a lot of former and fringe NHL guys. But like you rattled off a ton of countries that are going to be competitive. Are they in the top tier? No, but this is a 2.5 week tournament where one mistake puts you out of the medal round. One big moment puts you in the medal round. And this will be a ton of fun. And it really shows how much the sport as a whole has grown over the last 2 to 3 decades, because these are teams that even as soon as 5-10 years ago would have been considered cannon fodder teams. Oh, okay, they're going to play Canada. They're going to lose by 8 goals. They're going to play the US. They're going to get knocked around. They're going to play Sweden or Finland, and it's not going to be much of a contest. Now, these are teams that have some deep rosters. They have some good top-tier talent. Are they going to push for medals? Potentially, but it's not going to be an easy out for a lot of the big countries to get to the medal round. They're going to have to earn their way there. This will be a really, really fun tournament.
100%. Like, there's going to be a lot of really good games, even outside of the big four, Finland, Sweden, the US, and Canada playing. Again, Germany is going to be a ton of fun, as I've said. I think Switzerland is going to be a lot of fun. Heck, Denmark just had an amazing run at the World Championships. They're now going to gain a few more NHL players. That is also going to be a team to watch. That Latvia also plays usually the top teams very tough at the Olympics. I am really excited for some of these other countries to play some of the big dogs in this tournament. But that will do it for the second segment. Coming up to end the show, can the Florida Panthers close out the Edmonton Oilers tonight? Pat and I are going to discuss that right after this. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Tampa. Pat, we literally have breaking news right as we are coming out of break here. The Penguins have announced that they have re-signed forward Joona Koppanen to a 1-year contract. It is a 2-way deal, and it's worth $775,000 at the NHL level. He spent a lot of time with Wilkes-Barre during this past season, spent a little bit of time with the Penguins scoring 1 goal in 11 games. With Wilkes-Barre, scored 8 goals, 23 points in 56 games, only played 2 games in the playoffs, of course, for Wilkes-Barre. But I'm totally fine with this. He's a 14th, 15th forward probably on the NHL roster, but he can come up and down between Wilkes-Barre and the Penguins throughout the year, especially if injuries arise. There is no shame to having as much depth as possible in your farm system. So I am totally cool with this.
Yeah, it's a perfectly fine signing. He pretty much tops out as a bottom 6 forward. And this is going to sound kind of mean, but I don't mean it that way. He's a guy. He's not going to give you a ton at the NHL level, but he's also not going to hurt you either. He's going to be there, like you said, 15th, 16th forward. When injuries arise, he can take up a spot in the bottom 6. He's not going to put up a pile of points and be productive, but he's also not going to be an anchor on your bottom 6. He's a guy that will help when you need him, and he'll be good depth in the system for the team. So getting him for 1 year at less than $1 million on a 2-way deal doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I'm totally good with it. That's another piece of business that Kyle Dubas has taken care of, especially after re-signing Boko Mama to a 1-year deal. We have to see what else he decides to do with some of the RFAs and then some of the other UFAs as well. But Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final is tonight. The Florida Panthers will try to go back-to-back and take out the Edmonton Oilers for a second straight year. They dominated the Oilers in Game 5. Very much a Panthers-like performance, especially after choking away a 3-goal lead in Game 4. Pat, it's very simple. We talked about this a little bit during our Monday episode, but I will ask you here. Does this series end tonight, or do the Oilers send this back to Alberta for a winner-take-all on Friday?
My head says we get a repeat champion tonight. My heart says Edmonton forces Game 7. The thing that has stood out to me so far through 5 games in this series is that Florida, for the most part, has been the better team for the vast majority of the series.
They've led for most of the series.
Edmonton has had their moments, but there has not been a lot to show me throughout this series that Edmonton can beat Florida. Now, if Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl put on the Superman capes and pull this team back to Alberta, they have a shot. Edmonton has the firepower to put up with anybody. The problem is they haven't been able to stop Florida. That's the biggest problem. They have not held them to less than 3 goals in any of the games so far this series. And while I'm not saying Edmonton needs to turn into a defensive masterclass type of team, they haven't been able to slow down Florida. And you can only outscore your problems so many times before you get yourself in trouble. And the thing is, the biggest difference now, to as I always do, quote Jeff Merrick, you might as well just call hockey goalie. And Edmonton doesn't have goaltending. Skinner's been fine. Pickard's been fine. But when the guy at the other end is Sergei Bobrovsky and he has shown how good he can be, it's a problem. And the thing is, everybody is going to compare the 08-09 to this year. The Penguins switched up their style the final 2 games of the 2009 Stanley Cup Final and turned into a defensive clinic type of team. They won both games 6 and 7, 2-1. And they shut down Detroit's big guns. And Detroit had some big guns in that series. Florida, as we know, has some big guns. And I really don't know if Edmonton has it in them to become a defensive team that can shut down Florida. Because as you've said, Hunter, Florida can play and beat you any which way. You want to play a 7-6 track meet, they'll play a 7-6 track meet. You want to play a 2-1 hard-fought defensive game, they'll shut you down and beat you in that game. You want to play a goon squad 5-4 circus type game, buddy, they pretty much invented that. So I think I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say I think we get a repeat Stanley Cup champion tonight.
I'm going to take the Oilers to send this back to Alberta just because I'm not going to waver for my prediction of Oilers in 7, but I still won't be surprised in the slightest if the Panthers do end this tonight and prevent a return trip to Alberta, just because they have been the better team throughout the series. They've led for most of the series as well. The biggest thing I need from the Oilers tonight is a much better start. Like, they're spotting the Panthers, 1-2 goal. Obviously, you saw in Game 4 a 3-goal lead. They're allowing the Panthers to get off to such these great starts. And I know a lot of the Oilers' MO this playoffs has been, we're good from playing from behind. We don't mind it. We have 2 of the 5 best players on the planet and all this good stuff. But, there's only so much you can do when you keep doing that game after game after game, especially against a team that just won the Stanley Cup last year. You can get away with it against some of these other teams, but even against a team like the Panthers, where, yes, they did come back from multiple goals down twice in that series, very unlike the Panthers, but you weren't going to do it again in Game 5, especially with the way the Panthers were playing. So, A, I need to see a much better start. B, when it comes to the goaltending, I actually don't think Pickard and Skinner have been that bad in this series. I think they've been left out to dry quite a bit. Now, do they still need an upgrade in goal? 100%. They badly do. And
that was pretty much all I was saying. Sorry to interrupt you, Hunter. That it's not that they have been bad,
no,
but they have not been good enough.
And that's fair. Like, you're going up against Sergei Bobrovsky. He's one of the 5 best goaltenders probably right now on the planet, one of the best big game closers right now, especially with the Florida Panthers. He's going to make the Hockey Hall of Fame. Probably is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, if I'm being honest with, if I'm being even more honest with everyone on here, excuse me. But I think Pickering and Skinner they've been fine. They just haven't, as you said, they haven't matched Bob, which is very hard to do. I still, they need an upgrade in goal. And I do think they could potentially get that this offseason via the trade market. Hey, we can joke about sending Tristan Jarry there for a bag of peanuts. That'd be funny for days. But I think they'll probably look to go a little bit more big game hunting. Maybe they try to go get John Gibson out of Anaheim, all that good stuff. But I still think they need an upgrade there. But, this is a legacy game for their big guns tonight. Connor McDavid, this is the second straight year you are down in a series against the Florida Panthers. What are you prepared to do about it? You are the best player on the planet. How are you going to find a way to send this series back home for a winner-take-all Game 7 on Friday? That's still another one of the biggest things I'm going to be looking for in this game. I will take the Oilers to win, but as I said, I will not be surprised at all if the Panthers win this game and win the Stanley Cup to go back-to-back. But I think that'll do it for today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. Pat and I will be back with another show for you all on Wednesday to discuss the latest Penguins news and everything else regarding the NHL. Hey, maybe we'll discuss the Florida Panthers winning the Stanley Cup on Wednesday if they can close out this series tonight at home. So for Patrick Damp, I'm Hunter Hodes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Wednesday.